Hello, and welcome to the All Things Narrative Podcast, where we explore the relationships between the stories we love and the stories we live. I'm your host, Derrick Hatch, and let's get started. All right, before we get started with this week's Why We Love episode, I just got a question for you. What keeps you going? When you're facing tough times, what sustains you? What values, beliefs, sense of purpose, hopes and dreams, stories, people, all of the above and more? What is it that keeps you alive? And that's what we'd like to know at All Things Narrative. And if you want to take a second, or more like 30 seconds to a minute, and record your thoughts on that, we will feature them on a special edition episode of All Things Narrative releasing May 31st as a way to create what we call a collective document where we can bring these experiences together and say, hey, here's a compilation of sorts of what keeps us going as people. And so you can email those submissions to Derrick H, DERRICKH at allthingsnarrative.com, or check the show notes for that description. And if you're in the South Florida area, we are going to be doing our Live a Meaningful Story workshop beginning on May 31st and going all the way through early July. So that is 6 sessions. They're 2 hours each. And it is going to be an amazing time together. If you love discussing stories, if you want to better understand your life as a story, what it means, how to reflect on it, where you want it to go, how to tell it in authentic and artistic ways, and to even be able to have a chance to tell your story in front of a live audience and more, I'd love for you to come to this workshop, and signups for that will be in the show notes as well. There's an early bird special right now where it's $100 for all 6 sessions. So that's 12 hours. And you do have to commit to all 6 because that's what you'll get the most out of when you do the workshop. So if you're loving this podcast and you want to get together with other people who love story and find that tribe and sense of community, then go ahead and sign up for the Live a Meaningful Story workshop. And I hope to see you there and that we can enjoy creating this safe space together to talk about our lives and our experiences and our identities and all the stuff you hear about on here and more. All right. So I am not alone today because we are back to Why We Love, where we take a franchise in pop culture and we talk about it. We talk about the story that this franchise tells and why we're so moved by it and why it's meaningful to us and why we keep being drawn back to it again and again and again. And so I got some returning friends here, and I've got a new friend as well here.
A new face, fresh face.
Yes. But before I got to say something about Jason. So last time, I got to make a correction here. So when we did the Batman episode,
Let's roast on him.
You originally said, like, there's nothing, like, special about me. I don't do anything cool.
I don't think I said that.
I thought about it later, and I was like, this guy, like, literally spins fire.
Ooh, bars.
At an amateur level. I don't even own the staff. I just practice. I did do it actually for a paid event. I wasn't paid, but someone else was. and I did it out front. But that's just one thing. So
that's one more thing than all of us can do. So I just had to set the record straight that Jason is a lot cooler than he gives himself credit for. And of course, we got Joe Lee Stark, a.k.a. Right. Joseph Wilson, back in the house.
A.k.a. Joseph Stark. We already know.
Bet. And who else do we got here?
We got Nick Natal.
Nick Natal in the house. I'm so happy. We've talked about this for a long time, getting you on here for an episode. And what better conversation than Star Wars? Because you're a massive Star Wars fan, right?
I have watched a few of those movies, yeah. I wouldn't say that I'm a massive Star Wars fan. My history of Star Wars is going about 3 years now.
Okay. So. All right.
He cool. Actually is a bona fide movie enjoyer prior to his educational experience. So he has a lot of authority in these subjects.
So I do have a film degree.
Yeah.
But I did not actually grow up watching Star Wars.
All right.
It's a relatively new passion for me.
So this is going to be very interesting.
3 years strong.
And that's probably a good
Ever
place.
Since I've known Joseph.
Yeah, that's right.
Bet. actually a good place to start is what were our personal introductions to Star Wars? So, Nick, you said 3 years ago, right?
So it's funny because my personal introduction to Star Wars is The Last Jedi, which is the movie
Whoa.
that everyone hates.
Oh, we're getting into that.
So
Yeah.
it was during 5/16, and I was staying at Face's house, just house sitting, and I just threw on Disney, and that's the one I watched first, and I was like, "What? This movie's amazing."
Now, why would you watch something called Episode 8?
So I didn't know like the rhythm of the movies. I just watched the first one I saw. I was like, I'm gonna throw this one on.
Freaking Disney. Put that at the front.
It might have been because it just came out.
Yeah.
So
I think it
about
was
3 years
around
ago.
that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was the newest one.
Okay. So about 3 years ago, you put on Last Jedi.
Yep.
That's what got you into it.
And
All
I
right.
started talking to people, and I realized how much they hate it. And so I was like, I think I gotta watch all these Star Wars movies now.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about that. Joe, what about you?
So my introductions was the Clone Wars. I grew up around that time where like the Clone Wars is starting to pop up.
Is that like mid-2000s?
Yeah,
Okay.
around that time. Yeah, I absolutely love Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Like that's the best top 5 of my TV shows that I really
Of all
like.
time?
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. What about you, Jason?
I think it actually did start with the VCR that my parents had of.
Always
Oh,
the VCR.
Right there.
Yep, the VCR.
The VHS.
So we're like,
love
what
it.
is this rectangle thing? I was old enough that we actually played VCRs pretty regularly,
Yeah, same here.
but I watched it through that. I was like, oh, okay, and it just kind of
Wait, watch which one?
A New Hope.
A New Hope. Okay.
A New Hope on VCR, and then I watched the other ones, and I remember when episode 1, 2, and 3 were like coming out. They were the new thing when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And like, oh, did you know? Oh, this one shows us Darth Vader is actually becoming Darth Vader. Blah blah blah. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I just remember all the moments coming up as I was a kid. So I did grow up with
Yeah.
a little bit of a background of the original series, but also when the prequels were fresh and they
Yeah.
were new.
Okay. All right. And for me, it was very similar to you, Jason. It was having the original trilogy on VHS in the original form. So your VHS case, was it gold or black?
It was in like a beaten up clear plastic hand. I don't know. They like salvaged it.
Okay, I'd be curious
It was
if
an
it
old
was
relic.
if it was a special edition or if it was an original. And I can't find my VHS tapes of them because they are the original before George Lucas did anything to them.
Dang.
And I can't find them. I don't know where they are.
I didn't know he
No,
did
you
anything.
can get them
Yeah.
pretty cheap
really?
online because it's just VHS. But
I know
but,
that he edited
The
so
sacred
much.
text.
Yeah.
Right. Oh gosh. So it was VHS, the original trilogy. Return of the Jedi was my favorite. That was like a frequent rewatch movie in my house. And it was the toys in like 1997, 98. They started to release a new line of Star Wars toys. And my dad, that's around the time that he got my brother and I into Star Wars, and it aligned well with the toys coming out. So we would frequently get toys. And I'm not exaggerating here. I have every toy from the original trilogy from that 1997 through 1999 toy line.
Wow.
The ships, the sets, everything. Not here, obviously, but it's all in Cali.
That's
and
right.
it's like hundreds of figures. And Star Wars toys were just amazing to me. And and Phantom Menace, got to see that in theaters on opening weekend. And so
So I have a question for you, Derek. What's
Yeah.
your favorite Star Wars toy that you have?
I remember the toy. Okay, I actually do remember the toy I was most excited about.
Okay.
Because Return of the Jedi as a kid was my favorite Star Wars movie. I had a Darth Vader toy for a long time. And then, of course, the way the toy market works is you double dip and triple dip because they come out with new versions of the same toy. So they had a Darth Vader that came out where you could remove his helmet.
Okay.
And I just thought that was the coolest thing. It's like, I could have him with the helmet on or I could have him redeemed with it off. So we'll talk about that actually at the end of the episode as like one of my favorite Star Wars moments. But yeah, so that toy, I actually remember very specifically getting that toy and being so excited. So now that we talked a little bit about our personal introductions to Star Wars, I'm going to give a brief history, and please help me keep it brief, because the Batman one I went way too long, and I had to edit out half that history. I rambled way too much.
If you go too long, I'll do the. The forward eyebrow.
Yeah, give it to me. Give
Yeah,
it to
he's
me.
the gauged audience. Like, all right, that's enough facts.
Yeah, I'm the layman.
Let's see if I can do this in 2 to 3 minutes. So, George Lucas, we know he created Star Wars, and he had a vision. And it was around in the 70s. You know, he's a filmmaker. His first film flopped, and his second film did pretty well. And this was a very cynical time in American history. You know, we had Watergate and Nixon. We had the Vietnam War. And so typically that was reflected in pop culture, including film as well. And the films that came out at the time focused a lot more on anti-heroes and kind of reflected the cynical attitude that was going on around the culture. And the film studios themselves were actually struggling quite a bit. So they were taking chances on these, you know, more independent filmmakers like Steven Spielberg and Francis Ford Coppola and all those. And that's why we get the 70s film boom and we get some of the greatest films ever made within a few years. And George Lucas is one of those independent filmmakers that they take a chance on. And I got to give props to Fox because Fox is the studio that looked at him and said, yeah, we'll invest in you. When Universal and all the other big studios kicked George Lucas out, Fox is willing to say, like, yeah, we see something in you.
And look at Fox now.
Owned by the mouse. But the cool thing about George Lucas is that he was really interested in mythology and philosophy and religion and all these different things. And he wanted to create a story that kind of reflected these things and tied it together and brought it to as many people as possible. And so there's a book that George Lucas read, and I have it right here. It's a fantastic book by Joseph Campbell called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Very cool. It was written in 1949, and what Joseph Campbell did is he went and studied all the world religions and mythologies throughout history, and he realized that there was a common narrative structures and patterns that existed in civilizations that weren't even, you know, in communication with each other. And this is where, of course, we get the hero's journey. And so this is the book where he really ties it all together and says, this is what a protagonist, what a hero essentially goes through. And I'll talk more about that when we get to the mythology of Star Wars. But George Lucas studied that and he consulted Joseph Campbell. And Joseph Campbell, who's a teacher, said that George Lucas was the finest student of myth and story that he's ever encountered in his life, which is a huge compliment. So George Lucas really took this to heart, and it took him like 4 years, I think, to actually write Star Wars. And it wasn't until he read this book that he actually was able to finish it. And, you know, it was way too long of a script, so he had to cut it into thirds. And so that's why, you know, he had the plan of a trilogy. And the deal that he made with Fox, which is really clever, was that he would essentially turn down studio financing and a larger paycheck if he was allowed to make his own sequels, you know, creative control. So that's why he funded Star Wars himself. They didn't, you know, the studios didn't pay to do it. So that's how he got that creative control. Cool. And he took less money, but he said, can I have merchandising rights and royalties? Which the studio did not really have a lot of plans for that. And it wasn't until like after Star Wars was released that the merchandising really boomed. And of course, George Lucas is laughing his way all the way to the bank at that point. So he's very clever business-wise.
The royalties.
So it opens up in 1977. It's a huge success. We know there's sequels and prequels that get made. And Disney buys Lucasfilm, and we'll talk about what happens there. And so Star Wars becomes a global phenomenon. And anything you guys want to add to the history?
I think you got that.
Well, no, I do have a quote. I was reading this.
Yeah.
This is from George Lucas. He says, I was involved in a lot of study and work in folklore at the time, and had gotten into folklore and mythology and the role it plays in culture and in developing certain anchors for certain societies. And I came to realize that we had no modern fairy tales, and that you could say the Western was the last of the myths. And I realized that it wasn't good. I mean, it wasn't a good situation not to have for young people some kind of fantasy life that was very simply, there is good, there is evil, and try to be good. He says all folklore is, I would say anyway, is a form of religion. It's the religious concept. There is a God, there is good, there is an evil, try to be good. And so it's really just so fascinating that George Lucas he just created this anchor for an entire culture to really rest on through Star Wars.
Yeah. And that's why I think the first film did so well, is because there wasn't stuff coming out that was like that had that mythic proportion, that was very heroic and optimistic, you know? it's what people needed, but they didn't realize that's what they needed.
Oh, and if I remember, this is around the time where the Vietnam War was happening, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of inspiration came from that as well. Because George Lucas, did not like that war.
Right.
So just those connections and similarities in his movie, the first movie, to what was going on during the time.
Yeah. He's brilliant because it's really a story about one man who had a vision and would do anything. If you guys saw the Empire Dreams documentary, he would do anything to make that happen, no matter what it cost. And he fought for creative control. He fought for it to be the story he wanted to tell. And it's really inspiring to see, despite all the obstacles they had filming. And the first Star Wars movie especially is a movie that really was created in post-production. Because when it was originally filmed, it was a disaster.
Yeah, we saw
but,
that in the documentary.
Right. But then, that's when they figured out the sound design and the special effects and the music. And these are models. These are toys. This is so ambitious. And so Star Wars is really the story of the underdog being able to rise above all challenges and make their dreams come true and do something great. And that's just not in the story of Star Wars, but it's in the story of how Star Wars is made as well.
And honestly, you really don't see that today, like with film industries, because as much as I like Marvel, it becomes cookie cut.
Yeah.
Like there's not a whole lot of creative control in those things with those big engines of just not universal, what's it called? Just cinematic universes and things like that. But just those personal stories, those are really getting snuffed out, I like those movies, those type of movies.
Yeah, me too. So this is probably a good time where we could transition now into what I think will be the bulk of the conversation, which is the mythology of Star Wars itself. So this is where we're going to actually talk about the movies and the story that Star Wars tells, adopting everything from American sci-fi and fantasy to Japanese samurai stories, Eastern religion, ancient Rome, Judeo-Christian stuff, Hinduism, Buddhism. So So let's dive into the mythology of Star Wars here. So when you guys think of Star Wars, what are some things that come to mind that you think somebody should know about Star Wars and what it means and what it all represents?
The first thing that I think of is just childlike wonder. It just brings you back to this childlike state where you can. We were actually listening to the documentary on a ride up here, and it said that Star Wars is not a story about really culture or politics or nationality, but man escaping his environment and going to a different life that we all would like to lead.
Luke leaves his origins of his aunt and uncle in the desert, and just this unbelievable journey of I've never experienced anything like this before. And like you guys were saying earlier, just George Lucas going from an independent film writer and director to this huge journey. It's the same thing. And as I look back, when I was a kid, of course, it was not the plot or the politics or whatever was going on in the movies that I loved, because that was all above my head.
Sure.
It was the moments. It's Darth Maul extending his hand and igniting his lightsaber and then igniting it a second time. And fighting both Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn in an amazing fight. It's Emperor Palpatine throwing Mace Windu off the building. It's all these cool, just awesome moments. And whoa, wow, that's amazing that got me. It wasn't, I don't know about this plot line, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't care less.
It's no plot line.
To an extent.
To an extent. When I grew up, I looked at these and I'm
then you become an adult.
Well, wouldn't you guys agree that in what you're saying, there's something about Star Wars that for a child, when we're all kids watching it, it's familiar enough to where we're it's like sword fighting. Or, it's space. It's like this. but it has its own thing. It's got its own look and feel that nothing else can compare to it.
I like the fact that anything can happen in Star Wars. You could have a Western in Star Wars. You can have a heist movie in Star Wars.
Yeah.
You can have any genre in Star Wars, and that's just like, it gives it just that diverse feeling. I love that.
Yeah.
We can talk about this more later because it might be a little bit beyond the scope of what this we're talking about right now. But I heard a few things just scrolling through Instagram where they was talking about the difference between Star Trek and Star Wars. That Star Wars is dystopian.
Yes.
And I just thought about that a lot, and I rolled that around in my head, and it's like, this is just a very high-tech version of all the problems and failures we just have right now.
That's a great point.
I have this super high-tech Millennium Falcon that can fly throughout the galaxy and go into hyperspace, and it's broken down, and I have to fix it all damn time.
Yeah.
Like, this thing is a piece of junk, and it has all these problems. It's like, no matter how far we go into the future, we have the same problems. We have the same fights. We have the same forms of entertainment. It's nothing new under the sun at all.
I was thinking the same thing. It is so unfamiliar because it's in space with lightsabers and all these monsters, and yet it is so familiar at the same time with all those things. So it connects while being so different.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So when you think of like let's talk about the original trilogy, because I feel like we talk about the original trilogy for a bit, then we'll talk about the prequels for a bit, then we'll talk about the sequels and other standalone stuff as well.
We have to talk about the sequels.
Yes.
Sequels 7, 8, 9. Come on, Joe.
I mean,
we have
to. We will.
We will.
We will get
it will be the most entertaining part of this podcast if we talk about the sequels.
Stay tuned for
Let's
that.
warm up a little bit, Joe.
But let's talk about the original trilogy, because I think we all agree that the original trilogy is the best trilogy out of the three, right? I think we can all agree on that. Yeah. And I'll even go as far as say the original trilogy is, I think, the greatest movie trilogy of all time. I don't think it's ever been topped.
Of all time?
Yeah, of all time. I don't think there's another movie trilogy that is better.
I would say.
What about the Shrek trilogy?
The Shrek trilogy.
Yeah, but here's the thing about the
we gotta be careful because there's a lot of trilogies.
Shrek the third is trash. And what you just said there about the Planet of the Apes, it's a great trilogy, but it's not an original trilogy. Planet of the Apes was long before that trilogy.
That's fair. Okay.
Star Wars as in the original trilogy, as a new concept, is the best trilogy ever.
All right, I can agree with that.
See, you're lucky Kung Fu Panda 3 wasn't that great.
The third one is always where it drops the ball, and I argue Return of the Jedi, even though I think it's the least best of the three. I still think it's way better than a lot of other movies. Yeah. But yeah, so the original trilogy is essentially a hero's journey, you know? Here, like, if you think of it like it's a circle. You guys have seen a picture of the hero's journey, right? So it's like each movie in the original trilogy has its own hero's journey arc, like its own kind of like mini circle. And then there is a macro circle hero's journey that all three movies covers, you know? So the call to adventure, you know, Luke, this farm boy, gets the information from R2-D2, help me Obi-Wan Kenobi. And the refusal of the call, he doesn't know if he can do it. He's pushed into that with the death of his guardians. And Obi-Wan, who's the guide, takes him under his wing, shows him the ways of the Jedi, gives him the lightsaber, the you know, like the supernatural aid or whatever. Then you've got the crossing of the threshold, which is where he's moving from the known world to the unknown world, and that begins in Mos Eisley and Han Solo and all that stuff that join in. And in the original trilogy, again, it's got its own hero's journey. So like you got to go into the belly of the whale like Jonah, and you got to go into the depth of like the worst of it, and they get drawn literally into the belly of the Death Star, you know? Yeah. And that's where they're tested. There's the meeting of the goddess where you meet Princess Leia. And the twist is that the goddess actually is not a damsel. The goddess figure, so to speak, is actually pretty awesome, you know? And then there's like the trials that they face. There's the trash compactor, you know, like the different things. And then the losing of the Guardian with Obi-Wan. You know, you've got this whole thing here. And then in the original... or in the whole original trilogy as well, you know, you've got like things in The Empire Strikes Back, like the whole, like the idea of the atonement with the father, where you know, Luke realizes the greatest twist in movie history, you know, that Darth Vader is his father, and that whole struggle. And there's the apotheosis, which is where like the hero achieve some kind of like status that makes them greater, and that's of course him becoming a Jedi. And then you've got his temptation, you've got the return, you know, where and that's all in Return of the, it's literally the return in Joseph Campbell, but you've got Luke coming back and things like the magical flight where the Millennium Falcon has to go and destroy the second Death Star, or in the first Star Wars movie, Luke having to blow up the Death Star, you know, rescue that comes from outside of the group, you know, all these different things, Master of Two Worlds, freedom to live, all that stuff. So essentially, if you look at the hero's journey, Star Wars is perfect. It's the perfect embodiment of all these things that Joseph Campbell talked about. And when you guys think of the original trilogy and you see that hero's journey, what are some of the moments that really stick out to you?
I would say just like, I think one of the things, like one of the scenes I really remember is when Luke meets Yoda for the first time.
Yes.
Because it's just like, you're expecting this great Jedi, or because you meet Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan's old, but like he looks like, okay, that's what I would imagine what a Jedi looks like.
Right.
But this is just his little creature. Mine, give me that sausage.
He's a Muppet.
And then
He's a Muppet.
and then he'll just start spitting truth, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
I never looked at Yoda as a monk before. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, did you guys know that the name?
Yeah.
Did you know that the name Yoda comes from the Hebrew word Yodea, which means the wise one?
Ooh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's cool.
look at that.
All the names. That's a whole other topic. Is all the names of Star Wars?
Like the human side effects.
They're
sound
all
effects over here.
all the Star Wars names are tied to something, you know, and they actually help you better understand the story.
Like,
Yeah.
But yeah, okay,
Vader
so
does mean father, right? That's what I heard.
No, Vader is like for invader, one who invades or conquers, and then Darth is a combination of dark and Sith. So, you know, yeah, all the names mean something. But yeah, so okay, so you're talking about the moment with Yoda, in Empire,
I pretty much said everything. Just like the fact that took you to a whole different like element where you just didn't expect that.
Yeah,
that's one of those stick out moments to me, because I was not expecting that when I was young watching that.
Well, and I love the cave where Yoda tells him to go in basically to the cave. It's another archetype there, and Luke, of course, has to face, you know, Darth Vader, this evil. But what does he see?
It's funny, when I was growing up, I never understood that scene.
I never did either.
Yeah, I was like, why does he see himself? Why was Darth Vader there? I don't understand. But now it's just like he fears becoming what his father is.
And that's a great example of like showing instead of telling, you know, like when a film does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
So what about you guys, Nick, Jason? What are some moments in the original trilogy that really stand out to you?
The hero's journey, what sticks out to me is the end of the hero's journey. I think it's the end of the first one where they get crowned in front of all the people.
Yes.
I was reading one time, they said that's going to be a picture of heaven. And we walk up in front of all of heaven, and the king puts that crown over us, and we turn around, people are just cheering for us. So the end of the hero's journey is what stuck out to me.
Yeah. I love that because they've changed, and Luke and Han are on their own journeys in the trilogy. But yeah, so it's like there's this idea that Luke and Han, you know, they complete an arc of some sort, and there's a sense of finality, even though we know the story's going to go on. But I love that picture. Yeah. What about you, Jason?
So when I think of the hero's journey, I think of it's over, the fight's won, we're good now. That's the Death Star blowing up, Darth Vader spinning around out of control, going, spaceship. Like it's won. There's victory. There's the satisfying of the Death Star. This is the payoff. We've done it.
Right.
We can wipe the sweat off now. We can sit back. It's done. Beyond all shadow of a doubt, beyond all annoying statistics that C-3PO could give, we have
probabilities.
We have ventured outside of everything we've ever known, and we've accomplished just the faintest idea of the dream that we thought of, and we did it. That's what I think of.
Until the Death Star 2, and then Palpatine returning, and then the First Order rising.
Well, we're not there yet. We're not there yet.
Luke couldn't fathom another Death Star.
Over again until you get to the Last Jedi.
Yep.
We'll get there. You guys really want to talk about the sequels? You guys want to see me get fired up? We'll get there.
3 and 4.
Right,
and 5,
I
6,
forgot the
7.
Death Star 3.
Yep.
And every what's it called? What are the First Order ships have Death Star lasers on it? I forgot about all that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I try
can't
not
wait
to
till we get
remember
to
that.
the
Killer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we'll talk about our rankings later, but I think Empire Strikes Back is one of the greatest movies ever made. And I think what it does as a sequel, and the reason why I think it's an amazing movie and it's a really good sequel is because the first movie is a very tight story and it's so good. But if there's one thing you can look at with the first story and said, man, I wish this went deeper into everything, deeper into the characters, deeper into the myth and all that stuff. And Empire does that, you know, like you get to explore the characters more. You get to understand the Force and that whole world. And you get to see that the conflict between the light side and the dark side isn't as black and white as it makes it sound, because now we know that there's actually a potential that Luke could be corrupted, you know, while he's on this path. And I find that journey in Empire so captivating. Like Luke is standing on the edge. Like, will he go down this path? You know, but it's like he loves his friends, and we'll talk about attachment when we talk about the prequels. But he like loves his friends, but that also could potentially be his downfall. That's what Yoda's warning about. You know, the whole third act of Empire, Cloud City, the Boba Fett, like the Empire there taking over, the betrayal, all that stuff. And just Han Solo going into carbonite.
That's where he should have died. He shouldn't have came back.
Well, Harrison Ford actually...
They wanted that.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford wanted that, yes.
He should have been dead.
Nah, the Return of the Jedi, he's good.
But yeah, so that whole third act, and obviously Darth Vader and Luke, like... Because that's like the first like lightsaber battle. Like the Obi-Wan Darth Vader one is cool in what it represents. But man, that fight with Luke and Darth Vader... Oh my gosh, I just get chills every time I watch it.
Yeah, you just torn with him. I love that.
And just, and it's just like he doesn't give in, you know? And so, man, I could talk about the original trilogy all day. But anything else on the original trilogy before we go to the prequels?
Not off the top.
Okay.
We could,
I
I'm sure I could think of
Yeah.
something if I sat here and closed my eyes and like concentrated, but I can't.
I'll give a statement. I want to see if you guys agree or disagree with it.
Okay.
Original trilogy, best film score of all time.
I don't know. I can't remember.
Best film score?
Oh,
Yes.
No, Jaws. It's
No.
Jaws.
No.
Huh.
Same person, John Williams. But like Jaws has like one thing that it does really well.
Yeah.
But Star Wars, you've got
you're talking about the actual music.
the music.
Score, yeah.
Yeah, like the opening, da 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 da. You've got that.
I almost
You've
feel
got.
embarrassed that like I didn't even think of that. No, yeah,
thought,
like
Ron
Well,
Jeremy
you guys know me. Oh no,
of
no.
all things.
Yeah.
But you guys know me as a music guy.
Yeah.
Like scores are important to me, and I like the Darth Vader, the Imperial March.
Oh, yeah.
the Mos Eisley Cantina. I actually have the Star Wars. I have an original record. I'll have to show you guys after this. I should have brought that in here as my Star Wars prop. But that would be mine. Is I have an original record of the Star Wars score.
Okay.
And from the 70s.
The only other one that even comes to mind is Jaws for me right now.
Yeah.
And I could concede that.
Yeah. Oh, it's just so good. It's beautiful. It's menacing. It's epic and big and small when it needs to be.
I do like the fun of the cantina music. That just like that's what they'd play. It puts a very, I wouldn't say human because they're all aliens, but a very personal, like, oh yeah, these are real people.
Totally.
Just sitting in a bar enjoying music, alien music.
Yeah. It's a world. It feels like a real world, and it feels lived in.
Yeah.
So we can talk about the original trilogy all day, but for the sake of time,
I will say this: I do love from the original trilogy. Like
Ewoks?
you said, it does. No,
Yeah, that's the other word that was coming to mind. You could talk about the Ewoks.
But just the fact that the world feels lived in, just like you said.
Yes.
I love that feeling, the practical effect feeling. That's what I love from the original trilogy. That it was the practical effects of it all.
Yes. And the guy, I have the guy's name here, who was the concept designer, Ralph McQuarrie. I think that's how you say his name. He's the guy who came up with a lot of the look.
Yeah.
Like he took George Lucas's words and ideas and said, can it look like this? So he should get a lot of props for giving us the visual of what Star Wars really is.
Honestly, that's what has inspired me from my film things that I do on
Yeah,
YouTube.
yeah.
I like the practical effects and stuff. I don't like using like just special effects and things like that. I'm like, if I can't make it, then I'm not going to put it into the story just because it's inspired me to do that.
And when you get to the prequels,
Right?
that all gets
CGI.
thrown out the window.
All CGI, man.
All a CGI dump, to say the least. All right, so prequels. So if the original trilogy was the hero's journey, then the prequels is the inversion of the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
It is the hero's journey, but it's not the path of becoming a hero. It's the path of becoming a villain.
Yeah.
So Anakin goes through pretty much all the same cycles that Luke does, except he makes different choices, and that leads him thus down a different path. Prequels, we're talking about Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith. And these are the movies that George Lucas envisioned making a long time ago, but he wanted to wait until the technology was right for it. And, you know, we can talk all day about the CGI and the trash that a lot of it does not hold up. Let's just be real there.
Yeah.
But essentially, before we get into the nitty gritty, the essential story of the prequels itself.
Couldn't even tell you what that is.
Well, and that is the thing is it is one man's vision, you know, and it is one man because I think George Lucas is an okay director, but I think he's better at story and whatnot. Like when Irvin Kershner, or I forget the guy's name, who did Empire. Like that's an example of the match made in heaven.
Yeah.
He's a great director, and he could bring George Lucas's stuff to life. I think the prequels kind of expose Lucas's weakness as a film director,
Especially dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't like sand. It's force and it's force and it just gets everywhere.
but man, it's so dang memorable. That's the thing. Is like,
Wait a minute,
how bad
how
it
did we
is.
fall into this? We're better than this.
I love the sad line. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No. That's with Obi-Wan with Qui-Gon Jinn.
No.
No. It's when they get captured when they're running through
Oh,
the
yeah,
ship
yeah.
with
Yeah,
the
the
Emperor.
Force. How did we get caught in this? Like, they actually say that in the third one.
But here's something that I think, because people will dog on the prequels, and we're going to dog on them quite a
we
bit.
are.
But
I still had
here-
fun watching.
Yeah, they are
the
fun.
prequels are
But
kinda
here's
fun.
what I think is the best thing about the prequels.
Revenge of the Sith is fun.
Oh, yeah.
For 20 minutes.
No,
for parts of
for
it.
all of it. We'll get there. Let me say this one thing, and then we'll get into it. So with the prequels, I think what's important to understand is the way the prequels and the original trilogy fit together. So there was a chart I saw one time, and I wish I could find it. But imagine like you see a chart, and you see episodes 1 through 6 on the chart, right? So episode 1, the main theme of Phantom Menace is really all about loyalty and forging unlikely alliances in order to come together for the common good to defeat evil, right? So that's like, you know, how Star Wars like starts, and that's actually what's going to be key in Return of the Jedi to them, you know, forging alliances with Ewoks and, you know, but seriously across, you know,
best
the
alliance.
rebellion and Lando and all these different things. So there's this idea that the trilogy, you know, the solution is there in the beginning, you know, and it's going to bookend it in a lot of ways as well.
So
But then
it's like poetry, it rhymes.
It's actually a very it's a very Jewish thing. This structure of storytelling here that he's using, it's actually used in the Bible quite a lot. This kind of a way of telling a story. So then you get to Acts 2 and 5, you know, episodes 2 and 5, and you know, Attack of the Clones is really a story all about the struggle between attachment and detachment. And so like Anakin. Is finding an attachment to Padme, and we can debate all we want how creepy that is, given the age difference. But Anakin is forming an attachment, a romance with Padme. But the Jedi, which he's also forming attachment with, is saying you can't have attachments. You have to detach from these things. And it's the struggle of where is Luke's attachment like going, and how he's slowly attaching to Padme, and he's drifting from the Jedi.
Wait, Luke, you mean Anakin?
Anakin, sorry. And in Empire, Luke is on the same journey of can he hold this attachment to his friends, but also be attached to the Jedi and to learning. And that's what Yoda's warning him about, is what that path could lead him toward, because Yoda knows Anakin and the path that he went down. So Luke and Anakin essentially go through that same arc in that story. They even literally have a battle in the third act with a fallen Jedi, you know, with Count Dooku and Luke with Darth Vader. And they both lose a hand. They lose something. There's something that it costs them, right? But the interesting thing is where Anakin's hand is mechanical, and we see visually that he is losing, like even when he's getting married to Padme, he is losing his humanity. There's a reason why it shows that mechanical hand, and it shows that he's on this path. That the direction he's going with Padme is actually going to lead him to lose his humanity. And Luke's hand, when he gets it in Empire, it's a mechanical hand, but it's flesh. It looks human. And it has this idea that maybe Luke is not going to go down that same path, because Luke is standing there with Leia, you know, not a love interest per se, but he's standing there with somebody, but he's not going to go down the path that his father went down. So there's like visual stuff like that their stories are going to go in a different direction. And then, of course, Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. Revenge of the Sith is the ultimate cutting down of hope. That is what that movie is designed to do. It is to create hopelessness, and it's all about betrayal. It's all about alliances that were forged earlier now being decimated. It's all about things being turned upside down. The Sith, you know, and it's very Roman, you know, it's taking from the Roman Empire, where it moved from a republic into a dictatorship empire. And it's actually historically chronicling that really well. And so Revenge of the Sith is, you know, Anakin like plunging into that path. And we see him losing that and completing his arc as the villain, and Luke in A New Hope beginning his journey of becoming the hero and seeing that hope reborn. So it's essentially like moving, you can't see it on if you're listening to the podcast, but you guys kind of see what I'm saying though, how like George Lucas really conceived of this to tell these stories of Anakin and Luke and the hero's journey and inversion and all that stuff. So I don't know, what are your guys' thoughts on all that with the prequels?
With the prequels, I really liked. I know Nick's laughing. We watched it together, and I was watching it like, okay, I should have watched the second one before it, and I didn't get time in my work schedule to do that. And Nick's like, oh, let's watch the funnest one anyways. I'm like, I agreed. So the clunkiness aside, because I watched it and I was like, oh, I'll watch this as a serious movie.
Yeah.
And I was disappointed when I tried to do that. I really enjoyed how the pressure from both sides of his allegiances, it really pushed out what was in his heart to be the deciding factor. I don't think he didn't really make the choice of what was right. It was what he wanted. What he wanted was power. What he wanted was recognition. He wanted prestige. He wanted a life with Padme, but he didn't want what was best for the Republic. No, he never cared about that. That was, from what I saw, was decided in his decision. Yeah. It was, I want everything I want, and I'm going to do it no matter what, even if I don't necessarily believe in either side completely. Yeah. And that was even shown when he was with Mace Windu. Right. Where the last thing he said before he cut off Mace Windu's hands was, I need him. Yeah. I need it. Like, it doesn't matter anything. I want him alive because I need him to save my wife because of this fear that's been placed in my heart. Yeah, fear's a good word. He completely acted out of fear the whole time in that movie. Yeah. And ambition and passion. Well, fear is the path to the dark side, right? That's what Yoda says. That's the first one. And that's what's really interesting in like Revenge of the Sith, because yes, you see the Jedi and you see the Sith and you see Anakin caught in between, you know, and you see that tension there because the Jedi, I don't know if you guys know this, but in the prequel trilogy, the Jedi Order is meant to represent the history of the relationship between the church and the state. So the Jedi representing the church and the Republic representing the state. And if those two get too intermingled like they did in the Middle Ages and all that stuff, how neither of them are well off and both of them will crumble in some way.
you see where Anakin's coming from. Like, you get it, you know, you really do.
Yeah.
It's a very human story.
I think the moment Qui-Gon died was when Anakin, there was no like hope for Anakin.
Yeah.
Because either side was too drastic for him. Anakin needed someone that understood both sides and was healthy in that and could help him navigate through that. And Qui-Gon was the only one. Qui-Gon knew that the Jedi Council were just too focused on politics. Qui-Gon knew that Anakin was the chosen one and actually believed in him.
Right.
Qui-Gon also just didn't follow like the Jedi rules just like to a T, just like Obi-Wan did.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan was the one that was just like, Master, you shouldn't do this. And he's like, come on, we're gonna go pod race. We're gonna bet on this kid.
I like the pod racing, by the way.
Pod racing. It sounds like Anakin was failed in many ways in his leadership.
Yes.
The people that were leading him failed him in many ways, and so I'm not sure that Anakin was only searching for power. He was really searching for that father or that guidance, that mentor.
Well, the father,
Yeah.
Well, and Anakin, here's the crazy thing. Anakin was a slave. We always forget that too, that he was, he was set free. But the irony of that is, you guys ever heard the 3 faces of Darth Vader theory?
Yes, with General General Grievous, Count Dooku, and
Darth Maul.
All represent a fraction of Anakin when he.
Do you know what each one represents?
General Grievous is the mechanical side of
him
of
losing
Anakin.
his humanity. Yep.
Dooku is the Jedi that turned to Sith, which is just like what Anakin did.
The fallen Jedi.
Yep. And Darth Maul. I always forget Darth Maul. Which one was Darth Maul?
Darth Maul is basically like the tool or the slave. Like Darth Maul was seduced into the dark side and is basically there as a pawn from Palpatine.
Just like Anakin.
And just like Anakin was becoming as well.
Yeah.
So in those 3 villains, you actually see Anakin, and the moment, like when Anakin kills Count Dooku,
It solidified that.
it solidifies that he's on that path.
Yeah.
Because there's some weird thing I read about how like the Sith always functions with a master and apprentice. And in order for a Sith to become a Sith apprentice, you have to kill the previous apprentice, And so when he kills Dooku, that's his initiation right there. And he's already on that path. And Obi-Wan mentions that as well, that he's on that path. And so, but yeah, those 3 villains reflect, they tell you the journey. And, Darth Maul slays Qui-Gon, which I think was his only chance. Anakin slays Dooku, and Obi-Wan was asleep. He could not intervene there. And then, so it's interesting.
Yeah.
That is a cool thought.
That theme's gonna come up later.
What?
That theme of failure is gonna come up.
Oh,
later.
I know it will.
And it's timed.
The biggest epic fail of cinema.
Directly into episode 8.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
I regret that I ate all my popcorn.
But the thing is, so this may be where my lack of experience with Star Wars comes into play, because I've probably seen the first 3 maybe just a couple times, and I don't really know what's going on. So as you explain it, what's really happening, the overall structure, I'm not sure it's told as well as you.
Yes, I agree. I completely agree.
So the idea of Star Wars here is way better than the actual product in these first 3 movies.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
The prequel trilogy for me is great ideas, terrible execution.
Yeah.
The sequel trilogy is terrible ideas, great execution. That sums up my feelings of the prequels and the sequels.
Terrible ideas.
So before we go to the sequels, anything else you guys want to say on the prequels?
Oh, I love
Good
Palpatine.
things, bad things.
Palpatine
is the MVP.
The only thing worth mentioning in
I
the sequel,
love
in the prequels.
Palpatine.
He is the MVP of the prequels. He saves those movies.
Yeah.
It is a fun performance.
It is, yeah.
Because he has to play both the Chancellor, who's all upright and in power, and he's so manipulative and sneaky. And the fact that they got the guy from the original Palpatine from Return of the Jedi to do that,
Help me, Anakin. The Jedi are taking over.
No!
I'm so weak. Like, bro, I just saw you shooting lightning, bro. What do you mean you're weak?
Oh my gosh.
But
And can I say with Revenge of the Sith that the duel between Palpatine, Yoda, and Anakin and Obi-Wan on Mustafar, best moment of the prequels.
best fight scenes. Probably best fight scenes
moment,
out of
maybe
all
a
of them.
moment of the prequels.
Best moment of all 3 of the prequels.
I would say Mace Windu and Palpatine.
Yeah.
Yes.
In that room.
Or
with
Order
Anakin.
66 with everyone just dying. That always gets me.
Oh,
Definitely
That-
Palpatine
that-
shooting
as
Mace
a-
Windu
as
out
a-
the window.
that is
That's the best. That's the most emotional scene.
Yeah,
I think
I
the
agree
fight
with
scenes
that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think the fight scene with Mace Windu and Palpatine, especially when they like fight slash and the window just blows out.
Yeah.
And it's just this huge atmospheric effect. I'm like, this
so
is
good.
a clash. This is awesome.
Also, the story of Darth Plagueis, that scene.
Yes,
when I was
we have
watching
to
that
talk
scene,
about that part.
When I was watching that scene, it was
Yeah.
the first time that I thought I was watching a real movie. I was like,
Yes.
we finally got a Star Wars movie. Because I was like, this is now good.
That scene is like great filmmaking all around.
Yeah.
And I wish there was more of that in the prequels.
Yeah.
Because that shows me that like
It could have been-
there's
it
something
coulda, yeah.
special in all this.
Yeah.
And that whole because it's so subtle, it's like, is he talking about Palpatine? Like is he talking about
Yeah.
himself? Like what's going on? But it adds so much to the myth of the Jedi and the Sith and all of it. Oh, I just love. I'm glad you brought that up because that is easily one of my favorite moments in the Revenge of the
forgot
Sith.
about
Here's the
that,
thing:
too.
that has some of my best moments in all the Star Wars movies.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you could dog on it as a movie and whatnot, but man, it's got real good moments.
Yeah.
In it.
Yeah.
So and I mean, you feel it sets up A New Hope so well. Like it really gets you there. It really gets you so in the bottom.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it has the best fight scenes in Revenge of the Sith besides Darth Maul versus Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn. And it has the lightsaber fighting scenes that the original trilogy lacked. Like it's not just Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader moving their hands like.
See, I like that
Within,
fight
like,
though
half
because
a
they're
foot
both
of
like
each
these
other.
old
They're kind of testing
masters.
each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like just tapping. No,
It's
hey.
a little slow. It's a little outdated, but it's still,
Yeah.
it still
I
works.
I love the choreography of the Phantom Menace fight scene, but emotionally it's so hollow for
It's
me.
empty.
It's
Yeah.
empty.
Yeah.
There's no
I feel
personal
that.
connection with any of it, you know? And that's a large part because I think Darth Maul is super undeveloped in his relationship with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. But that's why I love in Revenge of the Sith, like, you get why Palpatine and Yoda have to go at it.
Yeah.
They represent the polarities
Yeah.
of the best of the light and the best of the dark. And Anakin and Obi-Wan are in the middle.
Yeah.
You know, like, even the colors of the lightsabers, like the visuals, it all just, it slaps so good.
Sometimes I'm not gonna lie, the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan can
It's
feel
so
long
over
to,
the top.
It can feel long to
Yeah,
me.
I agree with
Yeah.
that. Yeah. But you
and-
get why it's there.
Yeah.
I will say, since we're about to wrap this up, I can feel I do like the portrayal of the war aspects of the prequels. It might be.
Yes.
I don't know if that's felt by you guys, but when they're on Kashyyyk and just the machines are rolling out of the water and rolling up on the
Yeah.
land, that beach battle. I completely forgot about the opening scene of Revenge of the Sith.
Yes. Oh my god.
Obi-Wan almost dies.
Yes.
Like they
great-
had to do the super risky maneuver where Anakin also almost
Almost
killed
died.
him.
Right,
and just
right.
shoved off the robots in the beginning. Remember?
Yeah.
Where all
the
the ships.
space battle.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That was actually cool. That was the war part, and they just somehow managed to get onto the ship.
Yeah.
But that was actually a really cool scene that I completely forgot. As a
That's
kid.
why I like
Glossed
Clone Wars
over.
so much, because it shows the war aspect of it all. That's
Yeah.
why I love that show. But that is one of the top 3 or 4 scenes from that movie. Just that opening
Yeah.
scene.
Yep, agreed.
It's a great opener.
And then
Yeah.
I will just say, I hope we have time. No, I'm gonna say it. I don't care. I'm gonna go. Yeah,
We're here.
Say it all.
I think that,
Go ahead.
and this is what made it such an appeal, is that what they really did well to overlook the really clunky plot points is the rule of cool. The prequels did the rule of cool pretty well, that would make you like kind of look past it at a time. And those were the moments that as a kid you're like, oh wow,
Yeah.
General Grievous just pulled out 2 more lightsabers and is
Yeah.
spinning around. This is crazy. Or Darth Maul with the double lightsaber and
Right,
just
right,
fighting
right.
both of them.
Yeah.
Them fighting Obi-Wan and Anakin fighting over lava. They should have died immediately. Like, they're a foot above lava. They should have been burned
Yeah.
to a crisp and died. That makes no sense. But man, is it so cool
Yeah.
and theatrical.
Yeah, theatrical's a good word.
Yes, Yoda versus the Emperor.
Right.
Even though the Emperor just got flung back against his chair, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they really did theatrical, cool
Yeah.
moments.
The rule of cool and everything except Jar Jar Binks.
Yes, but here's the thing.
But he's the Sith Lord.
Darth Maul was
He's the
so
actual Sith
cool.
Lord.
I completely forgot about Jar Jar Binks in that movie.
I wish I could
Completely
forget
forgot
about Jar
all
Jar
about
Binks.
this stupid battle,
I
which
wish I
was
could
also
forget.
still a little cool. The war part, except for anything that had Jar Jar Binks, and that's what I have to say. They did Rule of Cool pretty well.
You used to not like Jar Jar Binks?
Misa, Sith
Speaking of
Lord.
things we don't like, Sequel Trilogy!
Oh.
All right, I'm going to start off right off the gate and say it. If the original trilogy and the prequels, George Lucas had a story to tell and he knew what he was doing. Sequel trilogy, Disney had no story to tell and they didn't know what the hell they were doing.
They should have let Ryan Johnson just keep running. They should have let him just keep going because Ryan Johnson knew what he was doing. Disney did not.
They should have had J.J. Abrams sketch out, hey, Abrams, what's the story you want to tell in these three movies?
Old story that's been told. That's what JJ.
I have to agree with that. The stories that JJ has told and that he has shown is that they're the same stories. Granted, I like
Yes.
Force Awakens. It's fun, but it's just a retool. It's just a rehash.
Yes.
It's a nice
Agreed.
polished little version or CG spectacle of what happened before. I have to agree with that.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
That's why they should have gave it to just someone else completely and just had them map it out. I don't know who, but someone.
But that's the
Give it
whole
to
thing
me.
is, this is what kills me about the sequel trilogy. George Lucas, when Disney bought Lucasfilm, George Lucas said, I'm going to give you everything. I am going to give you episodes 7, 8, and 9, what I have written out for those movies. Here it is. Here's the master template. And here's the thing.
I didn't know that.
Like I said, George Lucas has great ideas. It's his directing and execution of these ideas that doesn't always work. So if you would have had George Lucas's ideas for 7, 8, 9, but you had a director like J.J. Abrams or somebody who could bring them to life,
Okay.
it would have been amazing.
You don't know that for sure. Because
I don't.
The first three were just so bad. Like, they're not very good movies. Sith is just fun. It's a lot of
But
fun.
they're good ideas. I just don't think George Lucas should have been the one bringing them to life.
It's
can agree
because
with that.
in the original trilogy, it was George Lucas's ideas, but it was people around him that was like, hey,
He had a group of people
yeah.
around him, and the sequel trilogy could have been that.
Empire was not George Lucas's idea. Empire was different.
It was his idea, but it wasn't his execution.
No, but from the documentary that we watched, Kirshner was the one that decided to make the story more complex, decided to add more romance, decided to add the twist. So it was really It was Kirshner's direction. It wasn't George Lucas's for the most famous Star Wars movie.
Right. It's still his ideas, though. It's his world.
Yeah. Well, then you can say that no matter what.
But the sequel trilogy, I think, is deliberately trying to either, with J.J. Abrams, copy and not innovate, which is one extreme,
Right.
or with Ryan Johnson, let's throw it all down. Let's
throw it
burn it all down. There's
man.
literally a moment in The Last Jedi where everything burns.
Yeah, but
It burns down.
But not everything burns down.
Let the
because
past die.
Ray keeps some of the text, though.
Oh, man.
Yes,
Ray still has-
yes, she
it's
does.
It's not throwing it all away. It's just...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not throwing it all away.
And to quote a fallen Jedi, I've been looking forward to this.
Well, I want everybody in this because I still don't fully... The Last Jedi is a lot more complex than we're giving it credit for. There's still a lot going on.
I feel like, everything in hindsight, looking at everything in hindsight, if they were going to do it like the way that they did it with The Last Jedi, they should have stuck with it. The reason why this whole trilogy looks failed is because I feel personally The Rise of Skywalker tried to spent most of its runtime trying to fix the mistakes of The Last Jedi because people were complaining about it and tried to give fan service, just like with The Force Awakens. If they would have stuck to what Ryan Johnson's themes were, or just like actually picking up where that left off,
right.
I feel like that would have been, at least we could have looked back at the trilogy like, okay, yeah, they may not have planned it, but at least they executed everything where it kind of flows together. Because now it literally feels like three separate things.
Right.
Like
yes.
And it feels like even the characters in those stories feel like separate characters in different universes.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah,
It
it's
is
an absolute mess.
And here's the thing.
Well, let's pick the best vision and talk about The Last Jedi.
More like the worst. Okay, let's talk about it. So I will acknowledge that Ryan Johnson is a good filmmaker, and I will acknowledge that on a technical level,
It's unbelievable.
On a technical level, Last Jedi is it's good on a technical level.
Last Jedi is gorgeous.
In
I'm
a
not
lot
gonna
of
lie.
yes. There's a lot of things about Last Jedi to like.
Mm-hmm.
But
bested by a girl who's never held a lightsaber.
And it's quotable. And it's just as quotable as Revenge of the Sith, too.
No, yeah.
It really is.
And that's what the dialogue.
Here we go. Okay. Okay.
We're getting messy.
So I think Force Awakens is a great setup movie, right?
Yeah.
It set up these characters, Rey, Finn, Poe, Kylo.
Yeah.
It set them up really well and all that stuff. Last Jedi throws it all in the garbage. And here's how. I'm going to tell you how, okay? So Rey is a Mary Sue, in my opinion. Like, she never loses. So there's no, like, strong, like, her first lightsaber battle with Kylo Ren, she destroyed, like...
Magically.
Force Awakens, this is outside
but even in Last
Jedi,
Jedi, she's just, like, awesome at everything. Like, I get, like, you can have a character that's good and skilled, and I want strong female protagonists, but there's never a sense when I look at Rey that like anything bad. The script doesn't allow that with her. It doesn't allow her to grow too far. Now and then all right now,
but I don't have it in me, so it's hard to explain.
And then let's talk about Poe for a second.
Yeah,
Poe is so dang unlikable in Last Jedi.
Yes.
Like terrible. Like, let's do this whole story about let's just throw him down. Let's throw him down a pit. And I get that the theme of the movie is failure. But here's the thing. In Infinity War, which we'll talk about next month in Marvel, that the failure is also the theme of that movie. And you don't need to make your heroes look like trash to tell a story about failure. But Poe is so arrogant and the writing of it is so bad. And the whole like General whatever and her whole thing.
Or
it's
General
so,
Holdo or
Holdo, whatever her name is, I don't care. It's so unlikable. And then Finn is the worst offender of it because Finn was my favorite character of Force Awakens. Like, let's do this story about a man who's a stormtrooper and realizes that he's on the wrong side. Brilliant. What's my favorite idea in The Force Awakens? And you know what we're going to do in Last Jedi? We're going to pair him up with Rose Tiquan. And we're going to send him to Cantabite, and we're just gonna throw him away. We're gonna throw him in the garbage and give him a pointless task where he literally arrives on the planet and is like, man, war, what is really done to people? And I'm like, you know what effects of war. You know how bad this is.
High key, they wasted Finn. Finn
was
a
all
wasted
three
character.
movies. And Rise of Skywalker doesn't help either.
Yeah.
Finn is thrown. The best idea in the sequel trilogy is thrown in the garbage and Rian Johnson does not do Finn any favors in Last Jedi. He's just wasted potential. And if you're gonna send him to Cantabite, bring him with Poe so we can at least build their characters together. Because here's the thing I like about Finn and Poe. Poe is hungry for war. He wants to be on it. And Finn, he wants to run away from it. They're the perfect like opposites to go together. Send them to Cantabite to see this town that's been ravaged by war. But no, we have to make Poe this unlikable dick, and we have to make Finn go on this pointless like second act quest that they're
to free horses and not free the slaves.
Oh my
kids
gosh.
that take care of the horses.
This movie hurts to talk about.
It makes sense if it's taken like that. If this scene has no point, but the scene does have a point, and I this is not like totally clear to me. But this is from a review. All right, let me just read this.
Okay.
Complaints about The Last Jedi storytelling has focused on Finn and Rose and Poe's directed excursion to the casino city of Canto Bright and is deeming it pointless. But the sequence actually has a very specific impact, if not in conventional epic terms. The Last Jedi intertwines three stories about hubris, specifically the kind of hubris that stems from emulating myth. Two of these stories, Kylo Ren and Rey, are about people from whom the distance to myth is small and vast, respectively. The third story about Finn, Rose, and Poe concerns people who can more freely choose their distance. It takes the form of a mock epic, and like many of those, has comic and tragic dimensions. The epic being mocked is Star Wars itself.
Yes. That's the problem.
So Rian Johnson is making fun of Star Wars. He is making fun of it and loving it at the same time. He's trying to separate himself from all of this.
Yeah, I get it.
So if you get it, then why are you flipping out over here on the other side of the chair?
Because we haven't gotten to the heart of the issue. We haven't gotten to the heart of the issue yet. The heart of The Last Jedi is this. It's not Luke throwing the lightsaber at the beginning. You know, like, that's fine. I'm all for subversion. I'm all for deconstruction. destruction, but what are you going to build in its place that's going to make it worthwhile? Here's the heart of why I think Last Jedi is the worst Star Wars movie and the worst offender, and it's this.
Like worse than Rise of Skywalker? Or
Yes.
Yeah, that's a big statement.
But I'm going to tell you why. Because there is something unforgivable that happens in Last Jedi. For those of us who grew up with Star Wars for decades and rooted for the journey and the hero's journey of Luke Skywalker, the one who was able to see the good in even the worst of humanity, the one who in Return of the Jedi, and I'll talk about this at the end, who was able to even risk death so that he would not, or not become that, or, like he still saw the good. That's that's his heart. That's what he sees. But we're so cynical in the time that we're in right now. We really want to cut our heroes down. That's a common theme in a lot of stories nowadays. And we are going to have Luke, this hero, we are going to see him look at his own nephew and decide that he is not worth living. He is going to, and yes, I know the movie goes around and say like it was for a moment and then I realized it, but the damage is done at that point. You have taken decades worth of character development. And yes, I'm okay with Luke exiling himself. I'm okay with him failing. I'm okay with that. But that decision, it goes against everything that George Lucas built and is intentionally there to try to subvert and get you, and it tears down the heart and soul in favor of your deconstructionist movie that you want to make and subverting expectations. And it hurt so bad to see that.
I just disagree because Luke is a human like the rest of us.
Yeah.
Luke is identifiable in this movie as complex and as connected to the audience than old man Luke in The Last Jedi is the best character in the whole series. I believe
I was on the same boat as you, Derek, because we had this conversation before we ended up watching, Nick and I, before we ended up watching all the Star Wars movies. I was like, it felt like a slap in the face. Again, as a creator, I kind of paired myself in those shoes. What if I created this entire thing, and then someone came along and was like, okay, I have this special item or special thing or special moment, and I'm going to cast it aside. I said that would be painful and that would hurt.
Yeah.
However, after watching it, it was like, okay, I can see where the direction was going. I would have preferred if the way they executed was handled a little differently, like him being like Luke being over Kylo's like tent, and just the awkwardness of it all, because what it felt like really was kind of like a parody of like what could have looked like. It felt like it kind of, to me, that's what it felt like, a parody of how they could have done it. But I'm cool. I like that storyline where the hero is like, okay.
Yeah, I know, because we talk about that with Batman v Superman.
Exactly.
But here's the difference. Hold on. Go ahead.
Yeah. Because you can't, because your heroes grow up. That was Luke back in when he was like 20 something. Your mindset back when you were 20 and your mindset when you're like in your 50s is two different things. Imagine this person who had to go through all that, and now he was able to get this this new Jedi temple, these students, all of this that he's been waiting for and dreaming of. And here's this kid. Yeah, he's related to you, but it's like, here is this possibility of someone tearing it all
I get
down.
it. I get it.
And one thing I want to say is that he is the wise figure now. He has no guidance. It's all him doing it. And one thing I was thinking about is one moment of weakness completely just tear down everything you ever stood for. Because we've all had those moments of weakness. Right. Does that mean that everything that we've ever stood for before that is gone now? And he even says it was fleeting. And humans are dynamic, not dynamic. Right. Dynamic. People are dynamic. The thoughts that we go through, the things we experience, it just changes. And I watch Star Wars without all the knowledge outside of it.
Yeah.
Like all these are the themes. This is I watched it and I enjoyed it. So I didn't get all of that when I'm watching this. I'm just seeing it as it happens. And I thought it was kind of cool that he just takes the lightsaber and casts it aside. Like, oh, that's not what I expected at all. Let's see what happens now. This is kind of interesting. And the subversion, it threw me off. And I was excited to see just, okay, now where are we going with this? This is not what I expected. Mm-hmm. What happened to bring him to this this corrosion of warmth, this coldness now? Where do we go? Like, he is just a dirty hermit.
Yeah,
hobo
drinking
alien milk. Yeah. What the heck?
Well, I want to hear what Nick's going to say before I make my argument.
The argument that this subverts everything, I don't think is true, because we were just talking about how Anakin was failed by every single mentor.
Yes.
This is right in line with the whole Star Wars trajectory, where now Ben Solo is failed by his mentors. Mm-hmm. And this theme
and
is
his father.
This theme is coming to a head, and Luke is displaying it probably at its highest level.
Right.
This is something that even Yoda says when everything's burning down.
Right.
Failure is our best teacher. Just pass on what you learn.
Right.
And then Luke redeems himself.
Yes.
Luke redeems himself in probably, aside from Darth Vader saying, "I'm your father," the highest moment of the whole 9 movies.
Oh, gosh.
But Kylo is more relatable to us all as humans. Like, he's having that attachment problem because he wants to be with Rey.
Yeah.
Just like in the
Which I like that conflict.
They keep so much of Star Wars. It is celebrated and at once subverted.
Yes.
And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. It's just not for me, and I'll acknowledge that. And the final thing I'll say on this with Last Jedi is just that, like, myths, like, reveal what a culture values. And I think it's fair to say that our culture, we're in a time when a lot has been hurt. People have been hurt. Institutions have hurt people. And I think my big thing is that, like this idea of making Luke more relatable, more human, but that's not how archetypes in stories work. Because, like, Jesus is an archetype in the Gospels, like a certain kind of archetype, just like Luke is a certain kind of archetype. And here's the thing. There are a lot of people who criticize the story of Jesus in the Gospels because he's not, quote unquote, relatable enough. So there's directors like Martin Scorsese who make a movie about Jesus. Let's make him more relatable. Let's make him be able to sin. Let's make him do this. And so here's the thing about that. Yes, he's more relatable and more human, but you've undercut the foundation of who that character is.
But I don't think that's a bad thing, though, because
for Jesus?
No, not for Jesus.
but this is my point. Is there in stories there are certain archetypes and certain functions characters are meant to play. Mm-hmm. The story of Jesus is a certain archetype in history. Luke is another type of archetype in history and storytelling. And we're taking a hero. And it's not like Batman v Superman where this is an Elseworld thing, and I can love that because it's an alternative. This is a canonical, and Lucasfilm purposefully erased the canon of the extended universe right before Last Jedi, so they can do whatever they want and say this is the only version that exists. And so again, I think if you understand, like, Luke and his role in story and what he's built, I think it makes him more relatable, and I get it. But from a storytelling perspective, you have to ask yourself, is this the Luke Skywalker that we need? Because what are we replacing Luke and Han and Leia with in these movies? We're replacing them with characters that are not fully developed. Yeah. A Mary Sue like Rey and Poe and Finn. We're not reconstructing something that's worthwhile. So if we're going to deconstruct and tear down our heroes, we have to put something in its place that's at least going to be worthy of it. And I don't think the sequel trilogy is telling a story that's worthy of that deconstruction.
The thing is, though, Luke is not the idol. Like, if Luke's story gets deconstructed, that's okay, because then you have Rey, who comes from nowhere and who can become a hero. You have Rose, Finn, and Poe, who all struggle with all their pride, but all end up getting redeemed at some sort to the end. And they all step in and save the rebellion as a team.
Right.
So I think you're just putting too much emphasis on Luke and this character arc when Jesus is what we're all being reminded of, but it's in all of us. It's in every character. Jesus is in us all. And so each one of these characters are moving with that Christ-like redemption.
Right.
So I just think there's too much emphasis on just this broken arc, where this is really a beautiful story that you're just throwing away. And if you think that Rian Johnson hates Star Wars, the end of this movie, that last shot with that little boy
oh no, that shot's great.
But
it's great.
But really, most of this movie is great. Kendall Bright, it doesn't totally work. Rian Johnson's really ambitious. He's telling a story within a story right there, and it doesn't totally work.
Yeah.
But a lot of this movie does work. And I'll take this movie. Like I said, this kind of reminds me of like the Jordan and LeBron debate. I wasn't there for the impact that Star Wars made.
Yeah.
So like Darth Vader saying "I'm your father" at that time probably was the biggest cultural thing that's ever happened on this planet.
Right.
But it's not to me.
Yeah.
I see that and I notice it. I acknowledge it. I see it. But I would still rather watch this movie. I have more fun watching this movie. So how do I rank them? I would choose this one just because I just have more fun watching it.
Yeah.
Is The Empire Strikes Back a better movie? Probably, technically. But I don't know.
And that's interesting because the thought is always like Star Wars is for the people who grew up with Star Wars, but it's for anyone who wants to watch it.
Of course.
So it's interesting that you picked it up right at that movie.
Rey has no roots. Rey has no origin.
Yeah.
And your association has no origin.
That
no
little
roots.
boy is about to become Rey at the end of the movie.
Right.
And that's all we watch Star Wars for.
And
It's
then
like,
it's
we
just-
can do this.
And it's just cut out because Rey's a Palpatine.
Well, that's the last one.
Well, I think can we all
not
agree
count
that
Rise
Rise
of
of Skywalker is one of the worst pieces of garbage ever?
Oh,
Yeah,
most
I agree.
definitely.
Yeah.
And it's funny because
Somehow,
that's the one that
Joe-
Kylo Ren wins his fight in too.
Joe, you gotta say it. You gotta say it. You gotta
Rise-
say the line.
Bro, somehow Palpatine returned. That is the...
Bro, keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Keep going.
No, it's just that is the dumbest thing ever. When we were watching this movie, we didn't pause any of the Star Wars movies as we were watching it.
Right.
We had to pause this movie
Yes.
and ask, were we watching the right film? And it felt like a fan film. It felt like a college fan film.
In The Revenge of the Sith,
Well, here's
Obi-Wan says, "We are Jedis. How did we get caught in this trap?"
Yeah.
That's
No, he
up
says
there.
we're better than this. He doesn't
We're
say
better
that.
than this. We have the Force. We're better than this. How did we get caught in
worst-
this light beam?
Yeah.
the worst.
There's a lot of them in
But
the
that's
Star Wars.
but that's funny. But like Rise of Skywalker with that line, it's just like
It's unredeemably bad.
yeah, you have
Yeah.
you're trying to explain how the greatest villain of Star Wars movies came back to life, and all you can say is somehow he returned.
And in Rise of Skywalker, the worst thing about that movie for me, and it is a sequel problem, but like in Force Awakens, I'm willing to go with it. Like, okay, so the Sith came back. Okay, I'll roll with it, but it's disappointing that all that happened in Return of the Jedi kind of didn't have a lasting effect.
Palpatine
But I'll roll
blew
with
up.
it. But yeah, but that's the thing, is like Rise of Skywalker, by bringing Palpatine back, is deliberately saying that Darth Vader's victory and sacrifice and his whole redemptive
Meant
arc
nothing.
meant nothing because Palpatine found a way to come back,
somehow-
and instead of giving us a good reason how, it just says somehow.
That's the real insult, not the lightsaber being thrown
honestly-
over the shoulder.
Yeah, I
That's
agree.
the real
I
one.
agree.
They should have been like
that is
at least
worse.
like, oh, like after I died, my contingency plans, like where my clone had to blah 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 blah. Something. Give me exposition. I'll sit through some exposition.
I still
Also,
think
the
it's a
cool-
bad
the cool
decision to
villain
even bring him back,
from-
though.
yeah.
Horrible.
The
whole
cool
movie's
villain
horrible.
from Episode 8, just a clone. We got 100 of them.
Yeah, we got-
whatever.
yeah.
Snoke is a good villain, by the way.
He was, and they threw him away.
He was fine,
in the
yeah.
whole series,
Yeah.
in the
Yeah,
whole-
he was
I-
good.
I
And they're just
like-
like, no, we got 50. Whatever.
Even General Hux. I like all those guys.
And then they
That's
got
fun.
wasted. Then they all got wasted.
I think
Phasma just
your point,
just fell down.
the characters
Twice,
being
twice.
a little underdeveloped. I think if Rian Johnson had another movie to take it where he wanted to go, that might have been a different story.
Yeah,
but
I
I think
agree.
for what he was trying to do with this movie and what he was trying to do with those characters, I think they accomplished what they were supposed to accomplish.
Yeah, it's just the lack of vision that gets me for those movies. The lack of
it's the lack of your
overarching vision. Overarching
No,
vision.
they all feel separate. I have to agree with that. They all feel separate.
Oh, the three of them.
Yeah.
It's a mess.
Yeah.
I do kind of I want to a little bit go back to the mythos and how the replication or the attempt to replicate the myths was really interesting because we see it and how it fails. Like Poe Dameron is, whether that's his personal motivation or it's just within the movie, he is this want to be Han Solo guy.
It's what he's supposed to be.
Yes.
And he fails horribly.
Yeah.
Like that was the complete wrong decision to do everything. He should have just listened to what the president said, but no, we have to take this into our own hands. I don't trust authority. This is what's right. We have to do it. We're all going to die otherwise. And it completely messed everything up. And I thought that was really cool because it's showing that all these characters that you want to be, or that they want to be, even these other myths that have just been passed down, like they can't. They're best when they're their own person.
Yeah.
Like, these are new characters, especially they have their own journeys ahead. Han Solo's dead. Kylo Ren killed him. We're not getting another one. And if you're getting another one, it's not getting one that even succeeds at being Han Solo.
Yeah.
All these things are different. Luke is different now. Even Kylo Ren is not the Darth Vader that you want. I remember when he first took his helmet off, I'm like, what is this? This guy's lame. What the heck? He's not intimidating.
His little
Curly
lip
hair. Yeah. Like Nick said, he looked like he was about to burp the whole time.
When he goes to take Rey's hand, he's like holding back burps every step he's taking. I'm like, what's this guy doing? It's funny.
But they're all just not who you want them to be. You love this past and you love the things that were cool.
It's funny.
But they're not going to have... It's different now.
Yeah.
But I did like that all these things were... like subverted a little because hey, this is a new story. This is different. Even Kylo Ren was like just teetering the whole time.
To that point, there's a phrase called the anxiety of influence, and it says the dilemma is this: how do you separate yourself from your precursors without defining yourself as or against them?
Wow.
You have a massive opportunity where people are expecting some form of what they already know, but how do you take that to another level without just rehashing everything from The Force Awakens? And so there's another quote that says, "Let the dead poets make way for others." And I think that is the core of The Last Jedi, where Ben is holding his hand out and it says, "It's our time."
Yeah.
It's like it's a new story. This is a new vision.
Yeah.
But it was cut short.
Ray should have went with Kylo.
I agree. I completely agree.
I don't know.
But not like where it's like it's okay. Now the next movie they're both in the dark side or something.
It may have been.
What if they flipped?
They should have balanced each
If they
other out
flipped,
because that's the whole thing is when's the balance of the Force coming?
It may have
and
been.
I think you kind of get that in Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, but neither film develops that enough.
It may have been too much if she goes, because then they cut out everything, and now it's a whole different story.
That's
but
true.
at least there's a rebellion still.
I would have liked that, though.
There's a good side and a bad side. That changes everything then.
Yeah, I would have liked if they both flipped. Like Rey became the vision that she saw in The Rise of Skywalker, and Ben became what he ended up being. And they're just like, wait a minute, no. And they're trying to convince each other again. It's their flip, but they're still trying to do this.
Yeah, I think there's a lot
and
more
they're
you
still
could have
trying to
done.
fight towards this sweet spot in the middle.
I will say the best thing Rian Johnson does in that movie is explore that more. And I do think that in Rise of Skywalker, it is absolutely failed how they could have done that.
Yeah.
But we're running out of time, so I want to get to our rankings.
Okay.
So,
I'm about to say one that we didn't get to talk about enough at all.
which one?
Rogue One.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, if you want to say something about Rogue
Yeah.
One, let's do it in our rankings.
Okay.
When you can talk about
no,
it.
that's what I mean. That's what's coming up.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do for the rankings is start from the bottom, go to the top.
5-1.
No, do all of them.
Oh,
All
Yeah.
of them?
I don't have that power.
I didn't do all of them.
If you didn't do all, that's okay. I did all of them, so I'm gonna read all of them.
Okay.
You can do 5-1. That's fine. If you don't do all of them, maybe at least say what your least favorite Star Wars
We're gonna do
movie
best
is.
and worst.
Okay.
So, or however you want to do it. I'm gonna do all. I'm gonna do 10. I'm gonna do. I haven't seen all of Solo. I couldn't finish it.
Really?
I just didn't like it.
Oh, man.
Wait, you didn't like Solo?
You didn't like
I did like Solo.
Yeah, I really like Solo.
Never
Yeah.
seen it.
You should watch Solo. It's
But-
it's up your alley.
I might.
But all right, who wants to go first?
I can go first.
Okay, go for it.
So my number 4, it's tied. The Empire Strikes Back and The Last Jedi.
Okay.
I put those together at number 4.
Ooh, that hurts.
The third one, I would say The Force Awakens, just because it's fun and it's something I normally base my stuff off of what I would rewatch.
Yeah.
So The Force Awakens, I would rewatch that. Number 2, it's Solo. I like Solo because that's what Star Wars should be. It should feel like, if it wasn't Han Solo, at least it felt like just this random adventure in Star Wars. And that's what I like about Star Wars. When it doesn't focus on the core stuff, but it's these little side adventures.
Okay.
And then my one is Revenge of the Sith and Rogue One. Those are my number 1.
Tied for. Oh, that's cheating.
Yeah, Rogue One and Revenge of the Sith. I just
Oh, for number 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Revenge of the Sith because it's Revenge of the Sith. But Rogue One, I don't know. Just that war gritty movie is not that good written. It's not good written wise. The dialogue's kind of like but it's just like I really like what they were going for in that movie.
Me too.
So that's my ones. Those are my ones.
Jason, how about? Oh, what's your least favorite Star Wars movie?
My least favorite is Rise of Skywalker, of course.
Okay.
Come on.
All right, Jason, go
Okay,
ahead.
so I definitely don't have as established of a hierarchy, but I can kind of go.
Hierarchy.
So definitely the least would be the Rise of Skywalker.
Okay.
I would say that I'm not so good. I'll just go with the top, and then we'll see how we go there. So I think that Rogue One was the best. It was the best done.
Why? Since we didn't get to talk about Rogue One,
we didn't get to talk about. So it's all these
Vader.
really cool characters that do not matter at all. They're completely expendable.
but they make them really cool.
Yes,
Yeah.
they make them so cool.
Agreed.
Even Director Krennic is cool in his
He's
ambition.
great.
Yeah.
Great villain.
And he's not completely outside of a relatable human either.
Right.
Like, he wants recognition. He wants, and to a twisted degree, he believes in the order and peace that this planet-killing weapon would ensue. But he also wants to be recognized. Are you going to tell the Emperor this? We stand amidst my achievement, not yours.
We stand amidst my achievement.
He is fighting. And then all the characters, by the way, the dialogue, I disagree. They had some of the funniest lines ever.
It is the funniest Star Wars movie. I completely
Rogue
agree.
One?
It's the droid.
Yes.
Can't you find that the best droid of any Star Wars
He is
movie? He
hilarious.
slaps. His humor is on point.
Okay, I'll
Whole
give
movie.
that. I'll give
Congratulations,
Best humor.
you are being rescued. Please
Yeah.
do not resist.
Yeah.
He is
Best
so
humor
funny.
in any Star Wars movie.
He is hilarious. Even I thought that Chirrut was lame at first, and I watched the scene and I'm like, actually, no, this is kind of cool. Just all these characters that are forgettable. They don't use the Force. Well, Chirrut a little bit. They don't have lightsabers, whatever.
Well,
but they're all doing this just huge Hail Mary of a move. And they all die. Like, most everyone who touches the plans to send them is just completely wiped
slaughtered.
out. But it was a real war. The scenes were so cool. Even at the end, I really liked that, Jen Erso, and you gotta forgive me because I'm forgetting the other guy's name.
I forget his name too.
I don't forget a lot of their names.
The bomb is going off. They're about to be consumed. And I really hope that my memory's not corrupted for this, but they don't kiss.
They don't, and that's what I love too.
Right.
They
They
embrace.
don't kiss. Yeah,
But
They
there's
embrace.
a contentness.
Yes.
There's an, I better get this out before I die. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to fulfill anything.
Right.
You are my friend. We did this together. There's nothing else that needs to be said, done. Everything is good. And now that this has been passed on.
One thing I want to go back to really quick that you said that I don't want to gloss over is the guy who uses the Force in that movie.
Chirrut, yeah.
Because that the best one of the best things about that movie is this idea that anybody can learn how to use the Force. It's not just the Jedi. You can learn the Force. It's like the religious aspect of it, you know, because the Force is, this thing that surrounds us and you can tap, and there's like a lot of, the Tao and the Holy Spirit, lots of things that make up the idea of the Force. But I love this idea that this ordinary guy who's blind and needs something to guide him and wants to give his life to it can.
Yeah.
And it's such a good
often
Star Wars.
inkling of the knowledge of the Force, because that's all still kind of
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Darth Vader is just this shadow in the corner that comes real for those poor, unfortunate rebel soldiers.
Oh my gosh. One of the best sequences in all
Yes.
Star Wars is that Darth Vader fight.
But it is such a cool human movie that didn't need all the
So real quick, that's number one. What are
That's
some of
number
your
one for me.
others? And real quick, and then we'll go to Nick.
I did like Revenge of the Sith a lot. Even watching again, I was like, this is kind of lame, but a lot of cool moments. And I did like, what's number 7? I'm blanking.
Force
on
Awakens.
it.
Yeah.
It was Force Awakens. So
We have a similar list.
The Rise of Skywalker is my least favorite. The Force Awakens, I saw it when it was fresh in the theaters, and there's a lot of cool things I liked. I liked the idea of Finn, awesome. Kylo Ren stopping the laser bolts in midair, awesome. Han Solo dying, awesome development. I'm like, yo, this is cool. The line is awesome, and Kylo Ren gets shot by Chewbacca, and he's still fighting. It was a lot of cool things in that movie. I liked General Hux. This new idea, even if it was kind of a rehash, and I saw it. The stormtrooper just spinning his lightning rod, going traitor, fun stuff. Yeah. It did feel like in the theater, I was like, this is basically episode 4, but I still liked it.
Okay.
The original trilogy is a little bit after that and mixed in, but there's nothing. They're all kind of along the same level for me.
All right, Nick, how about you?
The Rogue One feels like a pizza to me. Like a whole pie. Like everybody likes it. It's real light. No matter what, we can always order pizza and throw Rogue One on.
Yeah.
But it's not like the heavyweights of Star Wars or Empire. And I think The Last Jedi I think those are the two most complex movies of the whole series.
I love how, despite how we disagree on Last Jedi, our feelings on Empire are united.
Cool. It's true though. The Empire, when I think of Star Wars, I think of Darth Vader saying, "I'm your father."
Right.
I think of him glowing with the blue in the background, and he's standing up.
That's cool.
There's orange. It's just beautiful. It's really cool.
I want to get that on my wall one day.
Even the city. What's the city called?
Cloud City.
Cloud City.
Yeah.
It's just all cool stuff. And the worst are by far Rise of Skywalker and Phantom Menace. They're just. I don't need to ever watch those movies again.
All right. Well, I'll go from bottom to top. You know, today I'll be generous because I think Nick,
listen to this.
Nick made some great arguments for Last Jedi, and I do think it's a pretty all right.
Slide it down to top three. Slide it down.
But so I'll say for today, my bottom, and you can check out my full list on Letterboxd if you want to see my reviews and my in-depth, not analysis, but just my ideas of what the movies are essentially about and all that. So I'll put today for the bottom, I'll put Rise of Skywalker.
Man, that
I moved it up one slot.
Right?
Yeah,
I moved it up
one slot. That's all it's going to get.
I'll take it.
Because Last Jedi's next. Number 8 is Phantom Menace. Number 7 is, yes.
Man. All right.
Number 7, Attack the Clones. Number 6, Force Awakens. Number 5 and 4 could go either way, depending on how I'm feeling. For today, I'll say Return of the Jedi at number 5. Number 4, A New Hope. Number 3, Rogue One. Number 2, Revenge of the Sith. And number 1, The Empire Strikes Back is one of my it's in my top 10 favorite movies of all time.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect movie. It's a perfect sequel. I got nothing negative I could say about it. Those are our rankings. And so what I want to close with here is we close these why we love episodes with how these stories help us to live a meaningful story. So why are we attracted to them? Why do we keep rewatching them? Why do we spend an hour and a half talking about them? And so for me, and this will be our closing thoughts, for why Star Wars is meaningful to me, there's a lot of things we talked about today. And one of the things I haven't talked about enough is that in Return of the Jedi, in the final act, Luke surrenders himself to Darth Vader. And we know that Luke is next in line in Palpatine's eyes to take the pattern of the Sith. And that Luke, if he strikes Darth Vader down, he will walk that path. And the whole dynamic of like the fact that his friends are heading into a trap and Palpatine is using Luke's attachment against him, which we saw in Empire Strikes Back was the temptation he was going to have to face. And Luke is in that throne room and he has to just take Palpatine's word that they are not going to survive this. And Luke, against all odds, still holds on to that hope. He holds on to that pureness that was established in A New Hope and that in Empire. And he's trying to defeat the Empire but save his father. And there's this thing in narrative practices, and this was the previous episode I talked about, where we say that the person is not the problem, and the problem is the problem. People are multi-storied, and Darth Vader is the epitome of that, because we know the story of Darth Vader, that we know Anakin, and we know that he has fallen into a struggle bigger than him, and that's the struggle, of course, of the dark side. And like a spiritual warfare, he's given himself to that. He's lost his humanity, but Luke is able to look past that and see that Darth Vader is not the problem. It is the Sith and the dark side and all it represents. And if he can separate his father from that, then there's redemption. And that's the story of humanity, is if we can be separated from sin and that which it holds us into darkness and death and chaos, that's how we find redemption. And Luke holds out that hope that there's going to be redemption for his father. And Darth Vader says, it's too late for me. Obi-Wan says he's more machine than man. Everybody around him is telling him it's not possible. But Luke holds on to that. And when Darth Vader destroys the Sith and throws Palpatine down there, and he takes off his mask, and you have that emotional moment where you see that the greatest villain in cinematic history was just a frail, broken person that just needed someone to show them compassion. If I lived like that and treated every person in that way, and this is why Luke is so heroic to me and why Darth Vader is such a compelling antagonist, if I lived my life that way, and gave myself to that aspect of the hero's journey, it's so meaningful, and it makes me wonder what is possible in this world. So that's what I got there.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Yeah. And it makes me understand more why that moment in The Last Jedi hurt so much.
Yeah.
Because Luke meant so much. But I think on the other end of that, when he does fail and he does have that moment and we realize that we're all in this together and that Luke is the same that needs that compassion, that love, and that is broken at the same time. Even our heroes are like that. But when it comes to Jesus, he's just not like that. And the reason why we like these stories, I just wanted to read this. These kind of stories can be edifying, imaginative tools to help us picture and look forward to Revelation 19, when Jesus appears astride a white horse as the conquering king. There really is a Messiah, and fantasy stories about make-believe heroes can help train our emotions to recognize the real one. And I think that this right here is just the reason why Star Wars is so great, that we can get together and talk about this stuff, about lightsabers and space and Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. Like, it's just cool stuff, and this is just what life is about, really. Yeah,
that's great. Joe, Jason, anything to wrap up?
It's honestly what really connects with me is just the trauma side of people. You know, people deal with trauma every single day. People have to struggle with that trauma, and just the actions of seeing how people don't care about people's trauma. The story of Anakin. They didn't care about his trauma because they wanted to fit him inside of an agenda. They wanted to fit him inside of a role, or they just didn't see him as that person that should be this or worth this. But just being able to be that person that's against all that, and like, no, I see that you're dealing with things, I deal with things, and being able to walk alongside that person. That's always, you know, that's been such an inspirational thing to do. You know, be that person that's like against everyone else acting this way or saying these things. You could still stand next to that person.
It's so good. Jason, final thoughts?
So I think it's a little bit twofold for me. Just on the little bit of the lighter side, as I've talked about, it's the fun, it's the adventure, it's the new experiences, it's the atmosphere that just kind of takes us captive, and taking that step into something that you have no idea how it could go, but you know that this is right, this has to be done, we're going to move forward. And just the thought of, what am I fighting for? Who am I fighting for? What values are driving me forward? Whether it's, you know, Anakin and he's fighting because of the person he loves is in danger, and that's the initial thing. He's fighting to defend that happiness that he's found amidst everything that has let him down or been uncertain. This is the one thing he's sure of. Or Luke, he's fighting for the good that he still sees in his father. Or Rose, when they're fighting for each other to live and to continue on against hate. It's, what am I fighting for? What is driving me? Is it passion? Is it selfish? Or is it for the greater good? Is it for the cause? That is right. Like, what is at the core of all of my actions?
Wow. Yeah. And that's a great place to wrap it. So thank you guys for being on this episode. And thank you for the wonderful conversation we had about Star Wars and all things narrative related to it. And so if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to subscribe to the podcast, like us, and follow us on social media. And of course, to be able to join us next month for the next edition of Why We Love, where we will talk about Marvel.
Let's go.
So we will have a bit of Marvel, and we will
invite me back to that one.
We will invite you back. We will do our.
I'll have to re-up on the popcorn this time. I've completely missed out.
And if you thought I was passionate about Star Wars, oh boy, just you wait.
Man.
But we love Star Wars, so thank you so much. This is your friendly narrative practitioner, Derrick, signing off. Thank you so much, and take care.
#mutant and proud.
Until the uprising.
Yeah, that's right.
Bet.